Reform UK's winning of 5 seats at the last election never seemed like anything other than a gesture at the time, that while it was an accomplishment for the party, and that it would be nice to hear an occasional dissenting voice in the House of Commons, nothing really of any consequence would actually happen because of these 5 seats. Well, we were slightly wrong about that, weren't we?
But I've got a fun suggestion that I think would liven up politics, engage the public, and see a massively increased turnout. Why don't we have a referendum on whether we continue to be members of the ECHR?
Now, we've seen the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister over the past few weeks have fast-tracked these violent criminals on these riots. Isn't it about time we did the same with these yobbos, these thugs that are carrying knives?
When you take a drug dealer off the street corner, guess what? Another one appears because of the vile drugs trade and the amount of money involved. My constituents of Boston and Skegness believe it's exactly the same with trying your policy, Home Secretary, of smashing the gangs. If you smash one gang, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. Another one appear, and another one will appear, because there is so much money involved, that the only policy will work, which is to pick up and take back to France, which we're entitled to do under international maritime law. It will help British citizens, it'll help the British taxpayers, and it will help the French, and it will reduce the magnet factor.
Is that a protest flag?
It's not a protest. I mean, this is what I do every day. And the Prime Minister wants to criminalise me.
The fact I am able to get these clips, and with their very high view counts being seen by many people, demonstrates that there are people out there, the citizens out there are listening. It is the same way UKIP managed to get a voice out into the world when they were starting up. The difference here, however, is the organisation and the appeal of Reform UK as a party to the general public. Already we have seen defections and local by-election results coming from all corners of the UK, which not only shows the support for Reform's current proposals, but also a lack of faith in the Conservatives, and a clear opposition to Labour. It is also quite obvious that we will see a number of Tory defections over the next year or so. But while this momentum is good, and it is good, don't get me wrong, the question is, what do Reform UK require to take it to the next level, to be an electable party on a grand scale? Maybe not necessarily government, hopefully, but maybe not necessarily, but certainly the leading opposition party. Well, let's take a quick look at an article from The Times that wants to answer a similar question. Farage's new boss was serious about winning the next election. The Reform Party of 5 MPs is planning offices in every constituency under Zia Yusuf, its new chairman.
Please continue.
Now, just from this headline, there's a few things to mention. Things that are both positive and potentially negative. I use the word potentially very specifically. The positive is obvious. Expansion means a more grassroots movement is being formed that will aid reform the same way that the Lib Dems have been able to gain tractions throughout the years. The negative, however, is something I would say in code, as not to offend the YouTube gods. Many people I've talked to, and I do talk to a lot of people in order to get a good grasp of what the word is on the street, so to speak. So many people I've talked to fear that because the chairman is a member of the Religion of Peace, as it calls itself, the party will start to turn a blind eye and won't speak out against the atrocities being committed by others who are also members of this Religion of Peace. Atrocities that are being committed upon young girls and boys up and down the country. I think we all know what I'm talking about here. I don't need to actually say it. Now, there is a simple way to remedy this more than likely misplaced fear. It's quite simple. Stand up and talk about it with Yusuf at your side when doing so. There. Easy fix. Until then, people will still have doubts, but enough of that. Anyway, we move on. If the Tories and Labour thought Nigel Farage's Reform UK party peaked by winning 5 seats at the general election, 2 events last week should give them pause. On Wednesday evening, which was the 4th of September, Farage attended a Reform fundraiser hosted by Holly Valance, the former pop star and wife of the billionaire property tycoon and tech investor Nick Candy, who has already raised $2.5 million at a similar event for Donald Trump. This woman has basically been one of the biggest cheerleaders from behind the scenes for both Nigel and Trump, and for those who don't know her, you may recognise her from Liam Neeson's Taken, the first one, and the first 2 series of Prison Break where she had like a recurring role.
I deserve more than this. I deserve more than just being the girl that you call when you need something.
On Thursday, in a sign of where the donations will be spent, more than 70 would-be reform constituency activists attended a seminar in central London on how to set up a local party machine to target hundreds of seats next time round. Yes, so as I said, the grassroots movement is beginning, and this is the real challenge to Labour. This is the actual challenge. Remember, there were nearly 100 seats where reform came second that had Labour winning by whiskers. So putting boots on the ground early, beginning the campaign, showing support for local events, people and causes, this is what fuels electoral success. The professionalisation of reform is being led by the new chairman Zia Yusuf, the son of Sri Lankan immigrants who built a tech startup company into a business he sold last year for $200 million, whose goal is nothing less than to make reform the next government. If this sounds ridiculously ambitious, one Farage aide who attended both the fundraiser and the activist bootcamp said, "It felt on a different level to anything I saw with UKIP or the Brexit Party." So this right here is partly why Yusuf is such a positive rather than a negative in my eyes. Remember, the negatives I said earlier were not necessarily my views, but views expressed by local people, by people who are voters, the people you have to convince. Because of UKIP, there is an image many independent voters have when they see Farage. And it's an image thanks to headlines like this. Does Reform UK's election success signal a far-right future for Britain? Nigel Farage's Eurosceptic anti-immigration political project appears to have already reached its full potential. Yeah, articles like this accomplish two things. Firstly, the continued narrative of far-right. We've all heard it. I mean, Keir Starmer's been going off the rails for that.
Things will get worse before they get better.
Fuck off!
Reform is not far-right. They are centre-right, by every definition of centre-right. They are what the Tories once claimed to be. That's why they are slowly replacing them. Secondly, this also plants ideas like weeds, an idea that they are a one-trick pony, reached its full potential is what the quote said, similar language to how they talked about UKIP, for which you can see example articles of what they said about UKIP on screen right now. Yusuf and Farage, with help from the pollster Chris Bruni-Lowe, I hope I said that right, have devised a plan to take the next step by winning councils at the local elections next May and then take seats for the first time in the Welsh Assembly and Scottish Parliament elections in 2026. The constant criticism levelled at them was that they were Little Englanders who were stuck in the past, so taking the fight in not just England's local elections but crucially Wales and Scotland too, that sends a clear message of taking the fight to socialist turf, to Labour home grounds, that we're going to capitalise on from those second place results. A notion that others, not just me, have thought about as well. Labour looking over their shoulders at reform as popularity surges, they can influence the next election. Labour is facing pressure from the party led by Nigel Farage as they have begun setting up 120 local branches to focus on Labour-held seats, mainly located in South Wales and the north of England. The heart of Labour. Yes, I know you could also include Scotland in that, but remember they've been switching up and down between SNP and Labour, so concentrating on Wales and north of England, where north of England is much more socially conservative, you got more of a chance. These are not the actions of a pressure group. These are not the motives of the far right. These are the next steps of a new political party set to govern this country in the years to come. The only party, if they organise correctly, that could stop them is the Tories, but they are still so self-obsessed, concentrated on their own pathetic leadership election, which will only result in electing a complete melt. So they've left the field wide open for Reform UK to take up root, to basically take all the votes. It's their own fault. Hell, even The Guardian of all things agrees with this assertion. Obsession with Reform UK could leave Tories out of power for 20 years, warns Andy Street. The key here is that Reform UK must not be complacent, no matter how good things are right now. I think that is obvious to say, but more importantly, scrutinise, I mean deeply scrutinise, any defections, because for all you know, you could be letting in your very own Trojan horse, and as Achilles himself said, hateful to me as the gates of Hades is that man who hides one thing in his heart and speaks another. Thank you all for watching, do take care, and as always, God bless.